Hello and welcome. Today will be our first web-related tutorial. We will explore basics of Tailwind by creating a simple countdown timer. In future, I plan to have more mini applications like this where we can try out different technologies, frameworks, and libraries. As for now, let's talk more coding. Our goal for today is to get familiar with the basics of Tailwind framework and generate this countdown application where the user can select a date, a message, and start a countdown. The selected values will be prefixed as a target query parameters, so the URL could be passed to a friend or shared with someone. And when timer reaches 0, we will have a little surprise at the end. Yeah! Tailwind is a CSS framework that focuses on utility-first classes. So instead of us writing our own custom CSS code, Tailwind provides pre-built classes that can be used in HTML to have the same functionality as with basic CSS. Often enough, we need to jump through many CSS files to understand what is impacting our element. But with Tailwind, we have all the styling in place in HTML that can be easily seen and altered for that specific element. So here, by example, you can see that all of the CSS is inline in the HTML. That we can see we have an upper level div that is a flex with a flex column setup. Items are centered, and between flex items there is a gap. We have adding a padding of 7, and for responsive design, if there is a medium size screen, we can transfer it to a row. So it is quite powerful and quite easy to use. Another thing to highlight is the documentation. You can find everything you need: how to work with flag boxes, how to work with spacing, sizing, type of graphic, backgrounds, and other elements. Of course, there are many ways how to start using Tailwind. You can install the dependency, add the configuration based on your framework, and use it. For our purposes, we will have simple HTML page with vanilla JavaScript mostly and no CSS. So we will have just plain HTML code, and that's why we will use CDN. So I will copy the import here, and to verify that everything is okay, I will add text and we'll add class with some color, for example, text red 500. Let's open that in our browser and we can see we have a hello world text with a red color. Okay, so first of all, let's change the background color. It's quite late at night and it's killing my eyes. For background on Tailwind, there is BG as a starting prefix. Then we can specify the color, for example, gray, and then the intensity. And voila, we have changed our background. If you're interested more how the coloring works and how the elements work, you can check, of course, the documentations. You can see here are listed all of the colors that can be used and their color palette. So for example, if I would like to change background to blue and 400, it would be like that. So if I provide here blue, 400, I provided it for text. But anyway, you can see how the colors work. Let's start with the timer. So ideally, we would like to see the output like 00 for days, for hours, minutes, and seconds. The text is quite small. I would like to increase it. So there is a text, and then there is pre-built parameters. For example, SM for small, MD for medium, then there is large, then there is extra large. So there is 2XL, and we can put, for example, 8XL as quite large. Okay, but I want to center our text. So I will provide here a text center alignment and will align my text horizontally. And of course, we would like to center it vertically. So one way how we can do that is by changing our body into a flex container, setting items center and justify center. By refreshing, we have centered it horizontally again. So for example, if I remove text center from here, then there will be no changes. But it still stays sticky to the top. It's because our body does not fill whole page. To verify that, we can quickly put a border around it. So border, red 50, for example. And we can see that is all of the height of our body. So of course, there are pre-built classes also to modify the dimensions of our elements. For example, we can specify a min height to be screen size. And by refreshing, we have filled all of the page size and centered a div. So let's remove the border. We don't need it anymore. You can see how easily it is to use Tailwind to modify the look here inline in HTML. We can just find the element that we are interested and change the color of text, and that will be applied very quickly. Now that we have our text centered, let's make it more attractive. So for example, I don't want to have red, I want to have it green as 500. It will increase the contrast and will be much easier to see. I'm not fan of this font style. I would prefer to have it in mono. What else we could add? Let's separate it from the background by adding a background to itself. So for example, have a BG gray, but let's have a bit brighter. I would like to add padding. I don't like how it sticks to the numbers. So for padding, you can use P. For example, if you're only interested in horizontal padding, we can provide X. For example, if I provide 10, you can see we have applied only horizontal padding. If you provide Y coordinate, it will have vertical padding. And of course, we can combine. For example, we can apply for vertical padding 3 and for horizontal padding 6. Now I would like to have round corners. So we can use rounded and provide again size. For example, X. We can change it to large. Actually, this looks quite decent. We of course can try, for example, XL. And there is also a full option that will be fully rounded. But I like the large variant, so let's stick to it. Okay, so now our timer stands out from the background. The only thing that is missing is a text message that we would like to provide along with the timer. Okay, so let's create another h1 element, provide some placeholder message, for example, and let's see how it looks. And it is pre-appended here. So because we have our flex and these are counted as different elements, we would need to have them as a group and have separate logic. So let's have them wrapped inside the div. What we need is to center it. Change size, for example, I want it to be smaller, maybe 6XL. Large, I think. Let's try maybe 5. I want to have this text in bold by using font bold utility class. Text should be white. And I would like to have some spacing after the bottom margin. So margin bottom, for example, 3. So you can see how quickly we could create this simple mockup of our countdown timer using just utility classes. So now time to implement the countdown logic. So ideally we want to have this running on the client side and be possible to share with a friend. So I would like to have a query parameter target where we would provide some sort of date in the ISO string and custom message. For example, happy day. Of course, it needs to be URL encoded. So if someone would provide this information alongside our URL, we should start the timer automatically until that time. Otherwise, if it's not present, we would like to have our form to fill in. So the first step would be to read these query parameters from URL. Let's have a function get params. We can access our query parameters by using new URL search params, and we need to provide current search parameters that are attached to our URL using Windows, location, and search. So params are key value pairs. We can access them by key. So for now, I will return a structure, the target. First, we will check if the element actually exists. If it exists, I will parse it into a date for our convenient use. So params get target, and we will go to the time. Otherwise, we will return null, so we can check later on that the element is present or not. And same thing for message, but because we are not doing any transformation, we can just put an or operator or empty string. So either someone provides a message or does not. We are fine not showing any message at all. Now that we have this function, we can quickly test it. Let's log the output of this getParams page and open console. And voila, we can see there is a message and the target in milliseconds. Now that we have everything, we can define our function start timer, provide the target and message to show. And let's start with the simple part and update the message in this page. So for that, we need to add an ID for our message element, down message. Because we're loading our script afterwards, we actually can access this element and create a handy constant here on top because we will access that element multiple times. Of course, if we are doing the script importing top, we need to be sure that window has successfully loaded, or if there is some framework that is actually have rendered those elements. But for now, let's create it here as countdown message, and we will ask our document get element by ID countdown message. So our first step is to set text content to this message. And to be on safe part, let's still perform this action only when page loads. So window on load. Here we will get our params, target and message. Then we check if the target actually is present, and only then we start the timer. So now if we refresh the page, the message has been successfully updated. So we can see it has been read from the query parameters and outputted in our page. So now we are ready to implement the actual timer. We need some sort of tick function that will update this value every second. So function, let's call it update, and provide target time until it should be updated. So now to understand how much time is left, we need actually to know what is current time. And that can be easily done by new date get time. To see the difference, we need to take the target and minus current time. Then we will have our difference in milliseconds. We need to understand how many days it is, how many hours it is, how many minutes it is, and how many seconds it is. To understand how many days are left, we need to take the total difference and divide by the millisecond amount in single day. So let's divide it by, there are 1000 milliseconds in 1 second, but there are 60 seconds in 1 minute, there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, and there are 24 hours in a single day. And in case we get 1.5 day here, we would like to only output 1. So let's use floor, because the rest of it will be shown in the minutes. So similarly, as we had this countdown message, let's add an ID to countdown itself, and let's call it countdown timer. And we again can now extract it here. Countdown timer. Get element by ID, countdown timer. And here, let's replace our countdown timer text content with this template that we will use days, then 0, 0, 0, 0, and 0, 0. So ideally, we would like to update this every second, but before that, let's do that at least once. Let's update it here just to see the changes. So when we'll start timer, we change the message and update the timer. Let's refresh it, and we can see it's 7. So I have selected March 16, and indeed it is after 7 and something days. So looks correct. If I will change it to some different, for example 11, it will be 2, put 6, and it's like -3. Okay, we know that we should not output minus, so if our difference is less or equals than 0, I want to put the countdown timer into just constant string and return and do nothing. So there should not be this case that we have negative numbers. Okay, now back to the math, we need to calculate the rest of the values. Here we would need to subtract the whole days out of the difference, so we could easily again to calculate how many hours, but we have also a modulus operator. Using modulus operator, we can get the leftover days after we remove the full days from the value. So it would look like this. So math, floor again. So let's find out how many full days actually got inside of our previous value. And we will divide the leftover with how many milliseconds there are in single hour. By this we will find out how many hours did not go into the full day. And we can repeat the same path. So we can remove the full hours that got in our difference and divide by how many milliseconds there are in, the hour. And for seconds, again, we can remove whole minutes and then just divide by 1000. Now we have our time and we can replace all of the elements. Now if I will refresh, nothing happens because the date is in the past, but if I will select some sort of date in future, 7 days, 23 hours, 2 minutes, 1 second. Looks good, except I would like to have 2 digits everywhere. So we need to pad and add a 0 in front. Our days into the string, and there is this helper function pad start, and we provide the maximal, it should be 2, and we fill those. And we need to do that for all of the values. We can refresh and have our beautiful view. And we can see by refreshing, the countdown slowly decreases. And now to make the timer refresh on its own. So here, where we start the timer, we have this update to change it once. And then we can start the interval, which will update our values every second. And now we can refresh it, and our timer is working. Okay, now I would like to add a small change. I would want to see the text become red when the timer is over. And here we have our comparison when the difference is less than 0. It means countdown timer is stopped. And here again we can add and remove our Tailwind utility classes. For example, countdown timer, class list, remove. Let's remove the text green 500 that we had. And let's add text red 600. So now let's quickly test it. Here you can see the timer is close to be running out, and in 3, 2, 1, it changes to red. Now for the fun part, let's add confetti when the timer runs out. So there is one handy library called Canvas confetti that we can use to fire up effects on our page. We can open the demo and see how it looks like, and let's use it in our project. Again, the simplest way would be to use the CDN link. Let's copy it and move to our head section. Now let's create a function fire confetti. So in order to fire confetti, we just need to call this function and provide the configuration. Let's see if we can do that without passing anything. Okay, and we want to do that when the timer runs out. Fire confetti. And let's refresh, and indeed, every second a new confetti is thrown in the air. I would like to see it more spectacular. Let's increase the particle count. Particle count, and set it, for example, 150. Now the angle is so narrow, I would like to increase the angle that the confetti is being spread on. Comes in degrees. So if we do 360, it will perform a firework. To cover the width of our timer, let's put some sort of 80. Now if we would like to put it a bit higher, we can also have an origin parameter that accepts x and y from 0 to 1, so 0.5 would be middle, but if we want to be a bit higher, we can put 0.6. Okay, let's run a full test and see if everything will combine together. 3, 2, 1, yay! So it looks quite good. Now let's add the builder part and finish with our project. So now we have our elements, and these elements should be only visible when we have provided target and the timer has been started. So for that, actually, I will add here an ID countdown, and by default, I will add a class hidden. Then you can see it has disappeared. It's still fired the confetti because in the background we are doing those things, but we have hidden the HTML elements. So let's also alter our code here and have our countdown itself as an element. When we start the timer, we would like to remove the, from the class list, remove the hidden class. But if the target will not be provided, it will be still here hidden, and we should not trigger the start timer at all. So if now I will remove the target parameter, nothing happens. Now I want to have this other section. This other section will have our countdown setup. So it will be quite simple. There will be 2 labels, 2 inputs, and 1 button. So let's start with some title, for example, countdown timer, a label called select target time. Then we will have an input with type date time local, so there is a date selection. Then again label custom message, which will be optional. Input type text and a button. Start countdown. So let's again start by adding the background so we can distinguish them better. Let's have padding from all directions and again rounded corners. Now this text needs to be white color. Let's have it bold and with size, for example, 3XL. And the text should be centered. Okay, now there is a label select target time. So let it be text white, let it be smaller because it's not really a title but just a label, for example, just large text. And to separate them from the input, we can have it with display block. But they're quite sticky, let's add bottom margin. Now we would like to repeat the same thing for the other label. So countdown timer also is quite sticky. Let's add another margin. And now the inputs are not visible. Let's provide background to be white for starters. Now it's visible. I would like it to take the full available space, so width full. Yes. Again, add some small padding. Let's make it rounded. And I would also want to have some margin bottom to separate these two sections. Okay, looks much better. And same thing then can be applied to the second input. Nice. Let's make button blue with some padding applied, again rounded, and text white to be more visible. So you can see how easily and quickly we can create and modify this form. Okay, now that we have visually created, then I think for now it is okay. Let's add the IDs for all the inputs. Input, target, and input message. And we also need the start button. So we will not handle currently any validations, we just want to do the following. When the user selects a date and provides a message and presses the start countdown button, we should refresh the page by appending the URL query parameters. By this we generate a URL that it can be shared to a friend, and we already have a mechanism that will pick up those query parameters and start the timer. So again, let's extract all those setup things. It would be message input, then there is target input, and we need also our button. And now we need to add a click event for our button. So start button, add event listener, click, and the function to execute. What we want to collect the input, target. So from target input we want to get the value, but we need it in specific format. We need to convert it to ISO string. So let's wrap it inside date and output as ISO string. Now we need message, which should be the message input, that value. And if it's not present, we just put an empty string. But again, we could perform some validations, but let's skip it. Let's just get current URL. So it's new URL window location ref. Then we want to take search parameters and set them to target and provide target. URL search parameters set message, we provide message. And we redirect to this new URL by using window location ref equal to this URL to string. Okay, so I refresh the page, select some time, my message and start the countdown, and we can see it has been redirected. We can see the message and we can see indeed the timer, but we have not hidden the countdown timer builder section. So now we need to hide this element. So let's again put it hidden by default. Here we will collect it. So if the target is provided, it remains hidden, but if the target is not provided, then we take this countdown setup, class list, and remove the hidden part. So now target is provided, it is not visible. If I remove the target, it is visible. And just like that, we have implemented our simple countdown timer using Tailwind styling. So we can select the date, we can select the message and start the countdown. The countdown is being prefixed to this target URL. We can share the link with a friend and be on the same page on the events that we are currently interested in. And just like that, we have successfully finished with it. And you saw how easily we can apply Tailwind to style our elements inline in our HTML code. We could quickly pinpoint any element that we would like to change or see what styles are applied and change it to our desired output. So we have successfully created this cool little timer application using Tailwind. If you enjoy such type of content where I and you together create some simple applications, let me know that down in the comment. Or any feedback in general would be appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe to not miss the next episode. Until that, keep coding, and I see you next time.